Hello, everybody, and welcome to Tap That MTG, the show where we tell you everything we know about Magic the Gathering that's probably wrong, but fun to talk about. I'm Leslie.
And I'm Shauna.
And today we are bringing you another pre-con deep dive.
Yay!
We have 2 new commander decks coming out, which is fantastic. We love our commander. In this video, we're going to break down the cards in the deck, talk to you about what this deck is meant to do, and then give you some suggestions for tweaking the deck to make it even better. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Shauna, and she's going to tell us what this deck is meant to do and which deck we're breaking down first.
Yeah, so this is the Phantom Premonition deep dive that we're doing. And this is Raynar the Ever Watchful. This deck is meant to make a whole bunch of creatures using the Foretell mechanic. The Foretell
Mechanic.
Oh my gosh. Mechanic that is new to this set. So we'll explain a little bit about what that is. So it is... we'll explain as we come across one. But it's saying Raynar the Ever Watchful. He's a 2/3 flying vigilance, and the first card you foretell each turn only costs 0 to foretell. And whenever you exile one or more cards from your hand and/or permanents from the battlefield, create a 1/1 white spirit token with flying. So this could get crazy.
Already a token generator. It's awesome.
Yeah.
So if we break down this deck a little bit further, we can talk about our mana curve, we can talk about the card types, and we can talk about the color breakdown. So as far as mana curve goes, we have a fairly mid-range mana curve, low to the ground, aggressive. Of course, you're getting a lot of tokens as well for free, which is great. Plus, something to consider is that the converted mana cost is going to be lower for a lot of these because you're going to be using the foretell.
Yep.
So, that being said, we have 1 at 1 mana cost, which is of course Soul Ring. 10 at 2 mana cost, 19 at 3 mana cost. 15 at 4 mana cost, and then really only 7 at 5, 5 at 6, 6 at 7, and 1 at 10, believe it or not. A nice big one, big beefy one there. So most of them between 3 and 4. When we break down our colors, we can see that we have 24 white, 18 blue, 11 multicolor, and 11 colorless. So more white than anything in this deck, but really our white and blue are fairly balanced and fairly even. Multicolor are always great cards to have in a deck. So our color breakdown is actually fairly balanced here. And then if we look at our type breakdown, of course, we have 36 land, which we'll talk about when we talk about formula. 32 creatures. So this is a very creature-heavy deck. 18 instants and sorceries, 9 artifacts, and 5 enchantments. So really, it's playing creatures. And as we go through the cards, you'll see that a lot of the reason it's creature-heavy is because you're wanting to flicker a lot of those creatures back and forth. But we'll get to that in a minute. So in order to kind of analyze this deck, we use a formula. Shauna, what is this formula that we use?
Well, this is a formula that Leslie found quite a while ago and made a little video on how to use it and stuff. But so we do every one of our commander deep dives using this formula, and it's crazy how close Wizards is to that formula as well. And I use it all the time for any
every time I build it down too.
It's so good. So of course you've got your commander, which is only one of them, but you've got your ramp cards. So those are cards that get your mana going and get them out there. So about 15 of those. Removal, we always go removal. We need 15 of those. Card draw, you got to keep those cards in your hand. We have 13 of those. High impact cards, so those are cards that are going to have an impact on the game. It's going to win you the game. It's going to make a big difference. So those are about 12 of those. And then you've got some other cards that are on theme or supporting the theme or supporting those win conditions. So about 10 of those. And then the formula we use for land is about 34. Is what we try to do, 34 to 36. So
And of course, any of those can go up or down one or two cards and be really close and on par. So We're going to start with this in this deck with talking about the cards that are in it right now for ramp and mana generating cards. The formula says that we should have about 15, and this deck has 11 from what we can gather. The first one is Core Cartographer. This is a fairly basic staple in Commander decks. It is a 2/2 for 4, but when it enters the battlefield, you can search your library for a Plains card, put it onto the battlefield tapped, and shuffle your library. So it's a body that comes with a land, which is great.
Then we have Burnished Heart for 3, which is a 2/2. It's another Commander staple. You can pay 3 and sacrifice it and search your library for up to 2 basic land cards and put them on the battlefield tap, then shuffle your library.
And Arcane Signet, another Commander staple now that it finally has come out. I love this card. It came out with Eldraine with the Brawl decks, I believe. And you can just tap it and add 1 mana of any color in your Commander's color identity. So that's pretty awesome for 2.
And Azuria Signet is the again, a staple for anything with blue and white. It's a 2 mana cost artifact that you pay 1 and tap it to add a blue and white mana.
And of course, if you're talking Commander, these are all called mana rocks. So if you're new to the game and you're kind of talking the lingo with everybody, this is what they're referring to when they talk about mana rocks. It's an artifact that gets you mana. So Commander Sphere is our next one. You add 1 mana of any color in your commander's color identity, and then you can also sacrifice it to draw a card. So this actually fits in 2 categories. So that's something to remember when you're adding things to a commander deck. Anything that fits into multiple categories is awesome.
For sure. Then we've got the Marble Diamond. I'm just going to talk about both of the diamonds at once. The Marble Diamond and the Sky Diamond. They are artifacts as well that for 2, they enter the battlefield tapped, but then they become, the Marble Diamond becomes a white mana and the Sky Diamond becomes blue. So those are really great artifacts to have in there.
Nice little ramp. And then Mind Stone for 2, it adds a colorless mana. So you don't get any colors from it, but you can also pay 1 and sacrifice it to draw a card. So another one that fits into both categories.
Then we have Soul Ring, of course. This is so great that these decks, a lot of them have Soul Ring in them, and pay 1 and you can tap it right away to be 2 colorless mana. So it's kind of a staple for sure.
And then we have Stoic Farmer, which is one of our first Kaldheim cards that we're talking about in this deck. And when Stoic Farmer enters the battlefield, you get to search your library for a basic Plains card, reveal it. If an opponent controls more land than you, then you get to put it into the battlefield tapped. Otherwise, you put it into your hand and shuffle your library. The nice thing is this has Foretell. So I get to tell you all about Foretell. So basically, if you are new to, I'm going to just assume you're new. If you're not, then we can do some references later. But basically, you're going to play this face down in your little exile zone for 2. That kind of puts it away as a foretelling, so to speak. You can play that card anytime after that for its foretell cost. So in this case, you put it face down for 2, and then it costs you 2 to play it for its foretell. Why would you do that if you had 4 mana up? You wouldn't. You would do this on turn 2, and then the next turn, turn 3, you have enough mana. You can then play it, and you have a 3/3 on turn 3 that had a converted mana cost of 4, but basically you're splitting up when you pay for those things. Almost every foretell, if not every, I think all of them, you play off to the side for 2 mana cost. However, in this commander deck, we have a nice little commander that you get to foretell your first card for free. So if you had your commander out, you could just put that little guy in the foretell zone, and then you pay him for 2. So he costs 2 less basically to cast. So I hope that makes sense. There'll be graphics on the screen. I'll make sure that you understand.
She will. She's amazing.
All right. So that's Stoic Farmer. A nice little 3/3.
Then Then we get down to another new card. It is a Replicating Ring for 3. It's a snow artifact. So there's also, with Kaldheim, there are some basic lands coming out that are called snow lands. So it's a basic land, but it's a snow island or a snow plains. And usually there's a benefit to that. So this one, we can tap it to add mana of any color. And at the beginning of our upkeep, put a night counter on Replicating Ring. Then if it has 8 or more night counters on it, remove all of them and create 8 colorless snow artifact tokens named Replicated Ring with add mana of any color.
Wow.
So you make a whole bunch of these mana rocks, basically, at the end of 8 turns. Pretty awesome.
It's pretty awesome. And then you have like 8 extra little mana rocks. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So then we move on to our removal section. So for removal, the formula that we use says to have about 15. This deck has 12, which is right on par. As we said, between 2 and 3 difference is okay. If you wanted to add a little bit more removal, you could do that. But what it has in here for removal is decent. First one is Angel of Finality for 4. It's a nice little 3/4. It has flying, and when it enters the battlefield, you get to exile all cards from target player's graveyard. So of course, when you're talking blue and you're talking white, the removal is often exiling or tapping or returning things to their owner's hands. This is no different. You're removing the cards because they can't bring them back from the graveyard, which in Commander is super important. So exiling their graveyard is a great option. So this is a good card.
That becomes another hand for so many people.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have Mist Raven, a 2/2 for 2 and 2 blue. It is a flying bird. When it enters the battlefield, you get to return target creature to its owner's hand. Usually you're going to want to do that with your opponent's big beast or something that they have counters on or something. So, you definitely want to use that as a removal for sure. It's the blue removal is putting things back in people's hands.
Meteor Golem is kind of one of our only destroy target non-land permanent or destroy. The nice thing about this one is that it's non-land permanent an opponent controls. So it doesn't have to just be a creature. You can destroy one of their artifacts or an enchantment. It's pretty high mana cost for 7 for a little 3/3, but it is destroying something and you get a body. So if you think about having 2 spells that do those things, putting them on the battlefield, that's what you're going to pay. You're just doing it all as one. So.
Then we have Cleansing Nova, which is a card that everyone loves to hate. It is a 3 and 2 white to choose. It's a sorcery to choose whether to destroy all creatures or to destroy all artifacts and enchantments. Timing wise, you're going to want to make sure because it's going to affect your stuff too. So think about that before you play those shenanigans. Sometimes desperate times call for desperate measures.
Now we put this one in removal because while you could do it to your own creatures to get something bigger, we think you're probably going to do it to theirs. Cursive Swine is 2 blue and X, exile X target creatures. For each creature exiled this way, its controller puts a 2/2 green boar creature token onto the battlefield. So you are going to be making flying spirits in this deck, and there may be a temptation to say, I'm going to kill all of my spirits and I'm going to make little 2/2 boars. However, there are things that buff up your flyers in this deck, so I wouldn't do that. I would use this to get rid of some of their things. Plus, remember, you have to pay X. So, however, which is fine, but you're basically going to have to pay 1 mana for each thing that you want to destroy. So, nice little creature removal if they have a bunch of big things that you just want to turn into swine. I like it.
Yep. Pigs everywhere. Then we have Return to Dust for 2 and 2 white. It is an instant that says exile target artifact or enchantment. If you cast this spell during your main phase, you may exile up to 1 other target artifact or enchantment. So that's a good time to use it on your turn, is if you need to get rid of 2 things.
Yeah. Banishing Light enters the battlefield, exile target non-land permanent. Again, there's that non-land permanent an opponent controls until Banishing Light leaves the battlefield. It's 3. It's great little removal in white.
Ghostly Prison. This is such cool art on this one. I've always liked this card. It's for 2 and a white, an enchantment that creatures can't attack you unless their controller pays 2 for each creature they control that's attacking you. So that is a great way to slow them down and keep them from attacking you totally, because they need to play their spells too, right? So they can't waste mana on attacking you.
Yeah. So Spectral Deluge, this is a great, wonderful removal spell. I love this, especially later game. So for 4 and 2 blue, which it's going to be later game because it costs you 6, return each creature your opponent controls with toughness X or less to its owner's hand, where X is the number of islands you control. So remember to count your islands and remember to know what the toughness is of your opponent's creatures, but basically it can return a bunch of stuff to their owner's hands. If they are playing a token deck or something like that, they don't go back to the owner's hands. It just destroys them. So that's something to think about as well. The nice thing with this is it does have Foretell. So again, you can put it off in the Foretell zone and possibly pay it for it half or twice as quickly as you would have, because it's half the cost.
Yeah, it's crazy. Crazy. Then we have Iron Verdict, which is a very graphic looking card.
Off with their head.
Chopped off. For 2 and a white, it's an instant that it deals 5 damage to target tapped creature. So it has to be a tapped creature. But as soon as they declare attackers, they're tapping their creatures. So that's when you can use this. Especially if you it's Foretell. So you foretell it hopefully for free, but it's 2 normally. And then you get to play this at instant speed for only 1 to do 5 damage to a target creature.
So good.
Crazy.
Yeah. For a common, good. It's a common.
Yeah, and it's white dealing damage like red does.
We approve. Raven form. Exile target artifact or creature. Its controller gets a 1/1 blue bird creature token with flying. Again, a nice little removal there. You can put it in the Foretell zone and possibly pay 1 for it. Nothing wrong with giving them a little blue bird, and then you can say, "Hey, Shauna, I just thought I would help you out and give you a creature."
And then this one, the typical blue shenanigans. Saw it coming. I love the title. For 1 and 2 blue, it's countering a target spell. But again, you can do this for Foretell and do it much cheaper and have it for later on that you can use whenever for 2.
Yeah, I love cards that have titles that allow you to kind of play with the words as you play them. The same with Didn't Say Please. I'm sorry, but you didn't say please. So in this case, it's I'm sorry, but I saw it coming.
Exactly. I know you're going to counter this spell.
Yeah.
Oh, brother.
So card draw and tutors is our next section. It says that we should have about 13. In this deck, we have about 10. So it's a little low on card draw and tutors. But again, some of the stuff that it has in it is really good. And if we can flicker them out and in, then we get multiple card draw from them. So that's kind of the point of that. So the first one is Arcane Artisan. It's a 0/3 for 3, but it has the ability that you can pay 2 and a blue and tap it to tap target player draws a card, then exiles a card from their hand. If a creature card is exiled this way, that player creates a token that's a copy of that card. When Arcane Artisan leaves the battlefield, exile all tokens created with it at the beginning of the next end step. So you have your cards in your hand, you're going to pay 3 and tap it, and you're going to put something in exile that then will become a copy of this creature. And that's how you're essentially playing it. It's a good way to get those huge, bigger creatures out onto the battlefield earlier because it only costs 3 to play them, and hopefully allows you to win the game a little bit quicker. The downfall, of course, is that they're exiled. So if this card leaves the battlefield, it's not like you get those back, right? So
you gotta take a chance sometimes.
Take a chance on me.
Yeah. Wall of Omen. for 1 and a white. It's a 0/4 wall that has Defender, and when it enters the battlefield, draw a card. So we're going to hope to be flickering that back and forth to draw lots of cards.
And we keep saying flicker. So what does flicker mean?
We keep saying that. So we have cards in this deck, I don't think we've come across any yet, that tell you to exile a card from the battlefield and then bring it back to the battlefield. Usually at end of turn is usually what happens. So they call that flicker. So it gets those enter the battlefield triggers happening when it comes back, as well as the first time it comes up, which is really awesome.
Yeah, it's also a good way to save something that might die.
Yes, definitely.
So Muldrifter is another one that you might want to flicker. It does cost 5 to play, but it is flying. And when it enters the battlefield, you draw 2 cards. So that is really good value. And it's a 2/2, and it also has Evoke for 3. So ultimately you can just keep flickering that back in and drawing 2 more cards. So as we said, the card draw that is in here is quite good.
And Evoke means you play it from your hand, but you put it back in your hand, right?
Yes, it's a keyword ability that basically allows a player to pay it for its alternate cost. So for the cost of Evoke, you would pay it for its Evoke cost, and then
do you
sorry, I have to look.
and then go back?
When it enters the battle, if the Evoke cost was paid, its controller sacrifices it. So you could, you could play it earlier, but then you'd have to sacrifice it. So
okay, which may or may not be a bad thing if you've got stuff bringing it back. Who knows? Yeah. We'll see. But then we have Seagate Oracle. It's a 1/3 for 2 and a blue, and a human wizard. When it enters the battlefield, look at the top 2 cards of your library. Put one of them into your hand and the other on the bottom of your library. Another card that's going to help you dig down and find your cards that you really want to play.
And Cloud Blazer for 5 is a little 2/2 flying. When it enters the battlefield, you gain 2 life and you draw 2 cards. Again, really seems like a steep cost for a 2/2, but because you're getting 2 cards out of it, it's pretty good.
And what if it's one that you get to make a copy of?
Yeah, exactly.
Wouldn't that be awesome?
Yeah.
Windfall for 2 and a blue. Each player discards their hand, then draws cards equal to the greatest number of cards a player discarded this way. Everybody gets cards.
Nice little political card.
Yeah.
So Tales of the Ancestor. I think we're getting into the Kaldheim ones now. Yes. So each player with fewer cards in hand than the player with the most cards in hand draws cards equal to the difference. So basically, somebody's being a card draw hog. Thank you for that word. That's not the word that came to mind. Card draw hog. You can just say, you know what? I think we all need to catch up with that. And so this is a nice little political card, and it has Foretell. So, that's great.
Makes it cheaper. Ethereal Valkyrie. I love the art on this. It's a 4/4 flyer for 4 and a white and a blue that has flying, obviously. Whenever Ethereal Valkyrie enters the battlefield or attacks, draw a card, then exile a card from your hand face down. It becomes Foretold. Its Foretell cost is its mana cost that reduced by 2. So there you go. You're able to make those things like the Cloud Blazer that doesn't have Foretell. You can make it become a Foretell card and play it cheaper.
It's
awesome. Really nice.
Yeah. Or Sun's Titan.
Yeah.
Oh, we're not there yet. Behold the Multiverse. For an instant, you get to scry 2 and draw 2 cards. And it has Foretell, so you're going to basically play it for free. And then 2. And that's a nice little card. I like it. I like it a lot.
This is one of the coolest cards, I think. Vega the Watcher for 1 and a blue and a white. It is a 2/2 flyer, a bird spirit that is this cool looking owl. Whenever you cast a spell from anywhere other than your hand, draw a card. So all those Foretell cards, as you're bringing them back in, you get to draw another card just for having this guy.
Because you remember you're casting them from exile.
So awesome.
Yeah.
So awesome.
Does he have a third eye?
Does he? He does. Wow.
Interesting.
Or something like that. Or it could just be a gem that's the same color as his eyes, maybe.
I don't know. All right, now we're into our favorite section, which is high impact cards. These are cards that we think will win you the game if you get them out. They're just really good cards that are meant to make this deck do what it needs to do. Formula says we should have 12. We figure it has 14. So you're giving up on some of the other ones like card draw and whatnot to have a few more high impact cards, which is okay. Angel of Serenity for 4, 5, 6, 7 mana cost. But it is a flying angel 5/6, and when it enters the battlefield, you may exile up to 3 other target creatures from the battlefield and or creature cards from graveyards. And when Angel of Serenity leaves the battlefield, then you return the exiled cards to their owner's hand. So basically, this is going to remove some stuff from the game as long as you need to, and then instead of it going into the battlefield or those cards going back onto the battlefield, they go back into that person's hand. The other nice thing is you can remove them from graveyards. So if you have some stuff that's in your graveyard, you can exile it with Angel of Serenity. And then when they kill Angel of Serenity, they put that back in your hand. So now you can cast them again. So they may not want to get rid of Angel of Serenity if you have something really good. So a lot of good kind of tricky things you can do with this card if you think about how you play it.
Yeah. So this deck, we were both talking about how much brain power you're going to need when you play this deck, because you need to know timing, you need to be paying attention to what's going on around the board.
But yet it's not so overcomplicated that a new player couldn't pick this up. This is a great deck for someone that has been playing for a little while, but is wanting to kind of take that one step up and say, I don't want to get too far into like all these triggers happening, but I want to think a little bit more than what I have been. So.
Yeah, definitely. Speaking of powerful cards, Sun Titan has been around for a while. It is a 6/6 for 6 giant with vigilance. He's a big creature, and whenever he enters the battlefield or attack, he has vigilance, people. He should be attacking
all the time.
You may return target permanent card with converted mana cost 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. Could be your mana rocks. It could be so many. It could be so many things.
So many things.
Yeah. And just battlefield.
Well, and we talked about the mana curve on this, right? Most of your stuff is 2 and 3 mana cost. So Brego, King Eternal, is another card that's been around for a while and people love. It's a flying 2/4, and when it enters the battlefield, it deals when he deals combat damage to a player, you get to exile any number of target non-land permanents you control, then return those cards to the battlefield under their owner's control. So basically, if he gets through and he does combat damage, you can do any number of creatures that are on your battlefield. You flicker them, put them back in, or put them into exile, and then they come back under your control. So that's kind of the first card, I guess, that we were talking about flickers something in.
So I'm going to explain something a little bit.
Yeah,
about this
please
one.
do.
I wouldn't have thought of this as a new player.
Yeah.
So I've just swung with all my creatures. So my creatures are tapped, including him. I've done damage with him. When I flicker those cards out, they come back in untapped. Yes. So then I now have blockers as well. So keep that in mind when you're attacking and you have this creature out. If you're able to do damage with this guy, you can bring that stuff back. All those enter the battlefield triggers happen again, and they come back and they are not tapped. They have summoning sickness, but you don't care because it's the end of your turn.
Yeah.
So
and pay attention
that's something I wouldn't have thought of.
Timing, because this one doesn't say at the end of the turn they come back. It says they go out and come back in right away. So,
okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
They've done damage. They come back. They're not tapped. You're ready to block with them.
Ready to go. Yeah.
So awesome.
The next one is yours.
Is it mine? Oh, sorry. I got excited about this.
I know, right?
Gold Knight Commander for 3 and a white. He's a 2/2. Human Cleric Soldier. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, creatures you control get +1/+1 until end of turn. So yeah, think of that flickering thing happening.
And your commander that's making spirit tokens.
You're going to get stuff.
So we haven't really talked about tokens yet, but we have one token generator, but you just wait, people. You just wait. So speaking of, I'm going to do the next two because they kind of do the same thing. So Imperium Eagle is a flying 2/3. Other creatures you control with flying get +1/+1. And then Thunderclap Wyvern is a flying 2/3 that other creatures you control with flying get +1/+1. So they're the same thing. The difference between the two, of course, is the Wyvern costs 1 more because it has flash. Nothing wrong with flash. Remember, flash is for instant speed. You swing in, they think, oh, well, I'll block a bunch of stuff. That's fine. And then you flash that in, and all of a sudden all your creatures get another +1/+1. So think about your timing on that as well. But those are 2 great cards and 2 good reasons why you don't want to get rid of your flying tokens.
The Soul Herder for 1 and a white and a blue. It's a little 1/1. Who cares, right? But whenever a creature is exiled from the battlefield, put a 1/1 counter on Soul Herder. At the beginning of your end step, you may exile another target creature you control, then return that creature to the battlefield under its owner's control. So you can use this card to do that flickering if you don't have something, but you're going to have something. There's other things here. And every time it gets exiled and gets to come back, or even just exiled, you get to put a counter on this guy. So he's going to get to be a really big spirit. And he doesn't have flying. It's one of those weird things. Some spirits don't have flying. I don't know why.
Doesn't have reach, even though he's gigantic.
So weird. One of those things. Mm-hmm. Spirits should all have flying.
So synthetic Destiny for 4 and 2 blue is an instant. Exile all creatures you control. At the beginning of the next end step, reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal that many creature cards. Put all creature cards revealed this way onto the battlefield, then shuffle the rest of the reveal cards into your library. So you get a library shuffle out of that card. You get to exile all your cards and get, any number of creatures back, depending on how many creatures you have on the battlefield. When we were talking about this, though, we did talk about timing. Remember, you have approximately, I can't remember how many creatures we had in this deck, but it's around 30 something. If you have 40 spirits, you don't want to put all 30 of your whatever remaining creatures onto the battlefield necessarily. If someone does a board wipe, there go your creatures. They're all gone. Mm-hmm. So that's one thing to think about. So you definitely want to try and replace some of your flying tokens with other good cards that do things, but you might want to, if you have a huge board state with all of the token generation that you're doing, you might want to not play this card right away. So just that's something to think about when you're playing.
It is a good response to a board wipe or something like that, but be careful.
Yeah, it's a great response to a board wipe. Actually, that's a good point for sure.
Marshall's Anthem for 2 and a white. It's an enchantment that has multi-kicker for 1 and a white. You may pay an additional 1 and a white for each number of times you cast it. And creatures you control get +1/+1. When it enters the battlefield, return up to X target creature cards from your graveyard to the battlefield. To the battlefield where X is the number of times it's been kicked. So that's another great way to get all that stuff back that you just died.
And it's got creatures you control get +1/+1. So again, it's great.
There you go.
Destiny of the Dragons for 4 and 3 blue. So it's a little hard to cast, but it is an enchantment. And when it enters the battlefield, you get to exile all creatures you control. Then create that many 5/5 red dragon creatures tokens with flying. When Day of the Dragon leaves the battlefield, so this is the downfall, you have to sacrifice all dragons that you control. Then return the exiled cards to the battlefield under your control. So if you have some of those smaller little 2/2 creatures that you've gotten, value out of them, those are going to be good ones because you'll exile them. And then when Day of the Dragons, if somebody does have some enchantment removal, they get rid of that. You get your creatures back. They all enter the battlefield again, which is fantastic. It's great if you can get rid of all of your tokens, I guess, and turn them like little 1/1s into 5/5 dragons. But remember, when those are exiled, they won't come back. So there is, some potential downfall there, but not much because you're going to have a whole bunch of 5/5 dragons and hopefully win the game.
Oh,
I love that card. I love that card. Yeah.
Oh my word. Then we have the Hero of Bredegard. It is a 2 and a white for a 1/1 human warrior. And whenever you exile one or more cards from your hand and or permanents from the battlefield, put that many counters on the hero. So you've just exiled and made all those dragons, and you're going to make this big boy here after that. I don't know. No, I guess that wouldn't be good timing-wise. It wouldn't work. But as long as Hero of Bredegard has 5 or more counters on it, it has flying and is an angel in addition to its other types.
That's awesome.
As long as it has 10 or more counters on it, it has indestructible and it is a god in addition to its other types. What the heck? Like, you're going to be exiling cards constantly with the Foretell.
Yeah. So you want to...
They're going to need to deal with this guy.
Well, and you want to play this when you have the ability to buff it up quickly because people will get rid of it right away. So.
Yep.
Or they should. If they don't, then they'll learn. Sage of the Beyond, 5 and 2 blue for a 5/5 flyer. Spells you cast from anywhere other than your hand cost 2 less to cast. So those Foretell cards that are already free to put in your Foretell zone now cost 2 less to Foretell. And this one happens to cost 4 and a blue to Foretell. Of course, you're going to pay that too earlier. So I love it. Yeah. And it's a flyer, a 5/5 flyer.
A 5/5 flyer. Like, wow. Searchland Elementalist for 5 and 2 blue, and 8/8 giant wizard. There's lots of giants in this deck. That's going to be important later on. As an additional cost to, this is the card. As an additional cost to cast this spell, reveal a giant card from your hand or pay 2. Whenever he attacks, you may cast an instant or sorcery spell from your hand without paying its mana cost. So you're 2 for 1 with this guy.
Yeah.
So that's it's expensive, but possibly cheaper if you have a giant and you get to cast a instant or sorcery for free. Nuts.
An Inspired Sphinx is another 5/5 flyer for 7. When it enters the battlefield, you get to draw cards equal to the number of opponents you have. So that's also in the card draw category. For 4 mana, you can create a 1/1 colorless artifact creature token with flying. So later game, when you have nothing else to do with your mana, or you have that insane amount of rocks that you created with your ring, you can just use some of them to create some Thopters, which are flying and buffed up. So, that's a good thing. Did I say I like this deck a lot?
She's pretty excited about it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not excited to be being on the other side of the table. Other cards on theme, win conditions. These are our cards that are helping us out, our crazy big cards do their thing. We have a Geist Honored Monk. The formula has 10 and there's 15. So we've taken cards out of the other things and put them in here. Mm-hmm. Some of these cards, there's so many cards that have 2 purposes.
And these are often your filler cards. So if you're going to tweak, which we'll have some tweaks a little bit later, this is probably the section that you're going to look at.
Yeah. Geist Honored Monk, 3 and 2 white. It has vigilance, and its power and toughness are each equal to the number of creatures you control. So this guy could be big. When it enters the battlefield, put 2 1/1 white spirit creature tokens with flying onto the battlefield. So it's right away a 2/2. So yeah, but hopefully you've got some other stuff out there.
It actually has the potential to be a fairly high impact card, but we put it here because it's not guaranteed. It's kind of conditional there. So
yeah.
Restoration Angel for 3 and a white is a 3/4 flyer, and when it enters the battlefield, you can exile target non-angel creature that you control, then return that card to the battlefield under your control. So a good way to, again, flicker something that hasn't entered the battlefield effect.
Yeah, and save it from dying or something like that. Cloud Goat Ranger. This is such a bizarre name.
Cloud Love the art here too.
Oh my word!
Oh, there's a cloud goat in the back. I didn't even pay attention to like what he was standing in front of, but yeah, no, it's a winged goat.
Too hilarious. So 3 and 2 white. It's a giant as well, a 3/3. When it enters the battlefield, put 3 1/1 white Kithkin soldier creature tokens onto the battlefield. You can tap 3 of them, and the ranger gets +2 and 0/0 and gains flying until end of turn. So the little Kithkin help him become a flyer. Somehow it becomes a cloud goat. I don't know. Such a weird card.
So Evangel of Heliod is a 1/3 for 6. And when it enters the battlefield, you put a number of 1/1 white soldier creature tokens onto the battlefield equal to your devotion to white. You will notice if you go back and look at all of these cards, a lot of the cards in this cost 2 white to cast. So your devotion is going to be pretty high anyway, and you're just going to get a whole bunch of little soldiers.
Should we explain what devotion is just in case?
Yeah, absolutely. I can do that. So as the card says, each pip, we call those pips, those little mana symbols. So in this case, it's the symbol for planes. In the permanents that you control on the battlefield, so that includes enchantments and creatures and all that kind of stuff, is your devotion. So basically, for every little pip on the battlefield, you make a 1/1 white soldier.
Yeah. We've got the Flicker Wisp for 1 and 2 white, so that one's going to help you with your devotion. It's a 3/1 flying elemental creature. When it enters the battlefield, exile another target permanent. Return that card to the battlefield under its owner's control at the beginning of the next end step. You can get their stuff out of the way.
Definitely.
So you can get in and kill them.
And then Whirler Rogue, when it enters the battlefield, you get to create 2 1/1 colorless artifact creature tokens with flying. And you tap 2 untapped artifacts you control, and target creature can't be blocked this turn. So great way to make something big and beefy unblockable. Remember, there was another card that created Thopters that are also artifacts that you can use. So if you have a bunch of them, then and something that created artifacts, you can potentially make several things unblockable.
Yeah. Well, and you've got all those other artifacts that are mana rocks too. You could use them too if you don't need.
Exactly.
Win the game. Mist Meadow Witch for 1 and a hybrid blue-white mana. It's a 1/1 Kithkin Wizard. And you can pay 2 and a white and a blue and exile target creature. Return that card to the battlefield under its owner's control at the beginning of the next step. You might want to use it on them. You might want to use it on yourself. Just depends on the situation. It's a really useful card, actually.
For anyone that's new, what's hybrid mana?
Yes. So you can play either the white or the blue to cover that.
Yeah. Migratory Route for 5 is a sorcery. The creature you get to create 4 1/1 white bird creature tokens with flying. It also has cycles, so it can help with draw if you don't need those 4 1/1 white bird creature tokens with flying. Nice, just token generator.
It's a card I've been wanting to get, so I'm excited that it's here. Erie Interlude for 2 and a white. It is an instant. Exile any number of target creatures you control. Return those cards to the battlefield under their owner's control at the beginning of the next end step. So that's a good way to save your dudes, make those enter the battlefield things happen again.
And another great flicker card, Momentary Blink for 2. It's an instant. Exile target creature you control, then return it to the battlefield under its owner's control. It also has flashback, which means that you can cast the card from your graveyard for its flashback cost. So you get 2 spells out of 1 for this one.
That helps. A Ghostly Flicker, another similar kind of thing. For 2 and a blue, it's an instant. Exile 2 target artifacts, creatures, and or lands you control. Then return them to the battlefield under your control. Helps.
Mm-hmm. And Swiftfoot Boots is fairly basic staple in most of the commander cards that Wizards puts out. But it's a great little card. It gives your creatures hexproof and haste. So the big thing, in my opinion anyway, is the hexproof to save something from being targeted that you don't want to be targeted. So I like it.
Then we have a new card that's called Cosmic Intervention. For 3 and a white, it's an instant, and if a permanent you control will be put into a graveyard from the battlefield this turn, exile it instead. Return it to the battlefield under its owner's control at the beginning of the next end step. So save your thing and bring it back.
Yep.
And it has Foretell. Do it for cheaper.
Yep.
Why not?
Another great Foretell card, Warhorn Blast, for 4 and a white, or its Foretell cost. Creatures you control get +2/+1 until the end of turn. It is an instant, so it's for combat. It's when you swing in.
Mm-hmm.
In response.
In response. Then we have Saga. Sagas are back in this set. So sagas are special kinds of enchantments where it has numbers down the side. It's got 3 different, or sometimes 4 or 5 different things that you do. So the first thing you do happens on the first turn that it's out, then the next turn, then the next turn, and then the saga is gone after that. So after it's finished. So the first one on this one, it's a Nico Defies Destiny. For 1, a white and blue. You can gain 2 life for each foretold card you own in exile. And the second time it's out there, you get 2 mana, so white and blue. Spend this mana only to foretell cards or cast spells that have foretell, so that's going to help you bring those back out of there. And for 3, you can return on 3. Turn 3, you return target card with foretell from your graveyard to your hand, so you can use it again. It's very nice little saga.
And we have another giant wizard coming at us for 7, Vigilance 5/5, and when it enters the battlefield, each player's life total becomes the highest life total among all players. So if you're playing against someone that's playing Lyra, who has like a 10 million life, I don't know who would do that.
They would never end.
All of a sudden, everyone has that much life. So I like it.
And then we have Mentor of the Meek, which is really great with token decks. For 2 and a white, it's a 2/2. Whenever another creature with power 2 or less enters the battlefield under your control, you may pay 1. If you do, draw a card. So that's a little card draw engine for you that might help. But you'd have to pay to make that happen. So sometimes it's not convenient, but it's a pretty good little card.
Yeah. Actually, I think those last 2 were supposed to be in the tweaks column.
Oh, were they?
Yeah.
I was wondering.
I don't think they're in this deck. Those were in the tweaks.
I don't remember Mentor of the Meek being in there, but
I just put them in the wrong column when I was putting them in. Anyway, the last one in there that's actually in this deck is Nico Defies Destiny. But those other 2 are good tweaks for this deck. So,
definitely
think of that. So our next section is our land. Of course, we won't spend too much time going through this. It has fairly basic land base. You can certainly upgrade that if you want to upgrade it. Our formula says about 34. This has 36. It's right on there where it needs to be. Of course, we had less mana generators, so you want maybe a little bit more land so that you definitely get what you want. Yeah. The first 2 are Kaldheim lands. So we have a Snowland Plains Island. So remember, when you're going to search for a Plains card, you can search for this card. It enters the battlefield tapped. It taps for either one of those colors. And then do you want me just to do all the dual colors?
Yeah.
So we also have Azorius Chancery. Now this one's tricky because when it comes out, you have to return a land you control to its owner's hand. So remember to have something that you have used already, hopefully, and then bounce it back. Tranquil Cove and Sajir's Refuge are both just tap. They come in and you gain 1 life. And then Azorius Guildgate and Meandering River, they come in tapped, and you just can tap them for either color. Why don't you do the rest of them?
Sure. An Opal Palace is for colorless mana, but you can pay 1 and add 1 mana of any color in your commander's color identity. And if you spend that mana to cast your commander, it enters the battlefield with a number of additional 1/1 counters on it equal to the number of times it's been cast from the command zone this game. That helps for sure. That's starting to get kind of crazy. They're in all the decks now. Cryptic Caves is a colorless land as well. You can pay 1 and sacrifice it though, and draw cards. So there's a little help. You can only do that if you have 5 or more lands. It's probably what you want to do anyways. Gates of Istfell, that's a new one. It enters tapped, and it becomes white mana for you, but you can also pay 2 a white and 2 blue and sacrifice it and gain 2 life cards. So there's a card, draw land, and you're done with it. Myriad Landscape, it's one where you can go and get, it's colorless unless you want to tap it, pay 2 and sacrifice it and go and get 2 basic land cards that share a land. So they do have to be the same. And then Command Tower, of course. Awesome. Add 1 mana of any color in your commander's color identity. It saves your bet more often than not. So, And then there are 13 plains and 12 islands in a lot of land.
Yeah. So that's the basics of this deck. We hope that you enjoyed that portion of it. We are going to move on to some tweaks and things that we think might make this deck a little bit better. Of course, the decks that Wizards is putting out right now are usually pretty good to play right off the bat, and we always suggest playing with it 3 or 4 times before you go ahead and tweak it, because you want to see how it plays for you, what you like and what you don't like. Obviously, you can't replace all your cards for the ones that we're going to suggest next. You might want to pick and choose. These are just ones that we thought had good synergy with what the deck is already doing that you might want to include depending on what you're going for with the deck. So the first one is Anointed Procession. Of course, there is a lot of token generation, and if we have more tokens, that would be great. So this is an enchantment, and if you would create 1 or more tokens under your control, it creates twice that many tokens. So your little 4 birds that you were going to create is now 8 birds. So yeah, Anointed Procession is great. It is an expensive card. If you have it, great. If you don't, I hope you can find it somewhere. But it is, it's not a budget ad.
No. But this is Favorable Winds. It's a little 1 and a white. It's a little enchantment that gives your creatures with flying +1/+1. So buff them up. Fly in there and kill people.
And then Sephara, I think, would be a great addition. You're making little spirits, you're making little flyers, and now you play Sephara and you play her hopefully for only 1 white, and all your other flying creatures have indestructible. And then if you place your Swiftfoot boots on her so she can't be targeted, now all of a sudden you have a bunch of mad people at the table.
She has lifelink too.
Yeah.
She's pretty powerful.
Yeah.
In this deck, for sure. Johnny's Welcome for 1 white. It's a little enchantment. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, you gain a life. So good with the tokens. Get lots of stuff.
Well, and you're flickering things back and forth. So
you're getting life.
Yeah.
Just keeping you alive so you can set up to really swing it.
Yeah. So, and of course, Wizards couldn't put all of the Foretell cards in there, but we picked out some of the ones that we thought were particularly good that you might want to put in if you wanted to kind of like play with it a little bit and do more of the foretelling. So the first one is Alrund's Epiphany. Create 2 1/1 bird creature tokens with flying. Take an extra turn after this one, and then you exile Alrund's Epiphany. So you only get to play it, of course, once. You're not going to play that one back from your graveyard or repeat your instants or sorceries, but you get a little extra turn, which might help you win the game.
And then there's another one called Cosmos Charger that's for 3 and a white, a 3/3 flying horse spirit. It has flash, so again, you can play that unsuspectingly. Foretelling cards from your hand cost 1 less and can be done on any player's turn. That's crazy. Then you can foretell this for 2 and a blue. So,
Glorious Protector for 4. It's a 3/4 flying flash. When it enters the battlefield, you may exile any number of non-angel creatures you control until Glorious Protector leaves the battlefield. So there's 2 ways you could use this. You could just exile some creatures that you want to come back, and hopefully your opponents won't want them to come back into the battlefield, because then they'll leave your little Glorious Protector alone. But if they don't leave your Glorious Protector alone, then she will let them all come back into the battlefield. So, yeah. Or you can kill her yourself.
Or just flash her out.
Yeah, that's right. And back in again.
Back in again.
Yeah. And then she picks stuff again. And those things enter the battlefield. Do you see what's happening here? Combo-ness.
Crazy combo.
You should put that in your deck.
Doomscar for 3 and 2 white. It's a sorcery. It's a board wipe. Destroy all creatures. But it has a foretell, so you can do that for cheaper.
Oh my gosh, that is such a cheap. And it just sits there until you need it. It's awesome. If you have your commander out, you should be foretelling stuff every turn, at least your first one. Just to, put them in a zone that allows you to cast them later. Mystic Reflection is an instant. Choose target non-legendary creature. The next time one or more creatures or planeswalkers enters the battlefield this turn, they enter as copies of the chosen creature. So instead of having them enter as themselves, they enter as copies of something else. So that is a nice little instant to have happen.
Oh gosh.
Gonna take some thought. But
some of the tweaks that Leslie is suggesting here, that like Agents of Treachery or something. Oh my god.
No, I haven't got to that yet.
I'm sorry, it just popped into my head when I saw the shark. So like, oh, he's such a shark, for sure.
Yeah.
It's horrible. Scorn Effigy, it's a little 2/3 artifact creature for 3. It has foretell of 0 already, just by itself. So you can play him as a 2/3 for only 2. So that's crazy.
It's free, basically. He's not like amazing or anything, but because you can play him for free, we thought he might be fun to put in. Starnheim Unleashed. This is a mythic, so it might be a little harder to find, but it has a 4 mana cost sorcery. You create a 4/4 angel warrior creature token with flying and vigilance. If the spell was foretold, you create X of those instead, and you can see down in the foretell cost that your foretell cost is white XX. So what that means is if you pay 4, then that is 2, because in order to make up 4, you 2 + 2 or 3 + 3. So that's how the XX works. And new players don't really understand.
Yeah. Then I think we're into the tweaks, right? Yes.
This is all tweaks. This is all tweaks.
Sorry, yeah. This is all tweaks. What am I talking about? I'm so sorry. We're in tweaks, duh. But these were from the new stuff. We're into old stuff then.
Yeah.
Then we have this crazy card, Urian, that is a 4/5 flying bird serpent. We can't use his companion thing, so I'm not going to go into that. But he's a flyer, and when it enters the battlefield, exile any number of other non-land permanents you own and control. Return those cards to the battlefield at the beginning of the next end step. So it's one of those ways of flashing things and making that happen again. So that could be an incredible addition to this deck.
Yeah. And then the next one we were kind of thinking, again, it's not a budget ad, but Thassa Deep Dwelling. Indestructible 6/5, as long as your devotion to blue is less than 5. Thassa isn't a creature. However, she can just sit there as an enchantment for all I care. At the beginning of your end step, you exile up to 1 other target creature you control, then turn that card to the battlefield under your control. Super duper awesome at taking advantage of those under the battlefield effects. And it also allows you to just pay 4 to tap another target creature. So a little bit of removal with that as well.
Yeah, it's helpful. Charming Prince for 1 and a white. It's a 2/2 very useful card that you can, when he enters the battlefield, you can scry to, or you can gain 3 life, or you can exile another card you own and return it back in. So enters the battlefield, triggers happen again. So it's just a really useful little tool to use in this deck for sure.
So again, this is one that I suggested. It's not a budget card, but it's also one that'll make everyone hate you. So Agent of Treachery enters the battlefield. You gain control of target permanent. At the beginning of your end step, if you control 3 or more permanents that you don't own, you draw 3 cards. So it gets you some card draw, and if you flicker it back in and out, you just get to keep stealing stuff, and that will make you enemies.
Yeah. Oh my word. Angelic Chorus for 3 and 2 white, an enchantment. Whenever a creature enters a battlefield under your control, you gain life equal to its toughness. Back and forth, lots of life gain, staying alive, so you can do Agent of Treachery crap.
Yep. And then Archon of Coronation. I love this card. It's a nice little Commander Legend card. 5/5 flyer. When it enters the battlefield, you become the Monarch. So those that don't know what the Monarch means, is basically a status that you gain. And if you are the Monarch, at the end of your turn, you get to draw a card. So it gets you some extra card draw. And the nice thing about this is, as long as you're the Monarch, damage doesn't cause you to lose life. So they can swing in as much as they want, and they don't do any damage to you. You don't lose any life. Now, you will lose, because that's how you lose being the Monarch. But then hopefully you have enough flyers, you can just swing in and do damage and get the Monarch back. So I just think that would be a good thing to add. So there's a lot of good tweaks that we thought would be good for this deck. Yeah. Anything else, Shauna?
No, I think that's... It's a really strong deck as is, and just tweaking it with a couple of the new cards. If you happen to buy some packs and get a couple of the new cards in there, that'd be really great to play around with that a little bit with the Foretell. And I think it's a really fun way to try a new mechanic.
Yeah.
Sure.
And remember, that's why we say play it 3 or 4 times, because you don't know how you want to tweak it until you're like, oh, I really like that when this happens. We're firm believers that you should play Magic because it makes you happy. So find the thing in the deck that makes you the happiest and do more of it.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway, that is it for this time. Thank you so much for watching and listening. We are available on YouTube and podcasts, wherever you can download them. Feel free to contact us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. We'd love to hear from you and see what you think. Tell us what you would do to this deck and if you would tweak it in any way. We'd love to know if you're excited about the deck. That's it for this time. We will see you next time. And in the meantime, tap those magic cards and have fun doing it.
Thanks, guys.
Bye, guys.